And we will move to the next bill, which is House Bill 273, sponsored by Delegate Grammer, and it's called Public Safety Militia Active Duty Combat. Delegate Grammer.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. For the record, Delegate Robin Grammer here to present House Bill 273, which advocates refer to as the Defend the Guard Act. Our military deployments are the most consequential and formative events for our country and for those deployed. For me, the most important reflections on our military engagements are given by those returning from deployment, such as the stories told by veterans returning from Afghanistan, who talked increasingly about politicized military leadership, mission creep, and a lack of direction in military decisions. Most Americans are likely unaware that, in addition to Afghanistan, U.S. troops have recently seen combat in Mali, Nigeria, Kenya, Somalia, Yemen, Syria, and Iraq. The burdens of these conflicts lay squarely on the shoulders of our sons and daughters. Many veterans suffer greatly from these conflicts. Thousands suffer loss of life or limb, carry the baggage of post-traumatic stress syndrome, or other mental health issues. When one of your constituents shares a Facebook post performing 22 push-ups, they likely do so with the thought of a friend or family member who suffers from post-deployment mental health issues or has committed suicide. We should also note that deploying troops to another country leaves us without support at home. Frequently, our National Guard is in another country, unavailable to deal with domestic issues. As our national leaders contemplate war with Russia or China, this issue is most timely. And although we have no authority on national war declarations, state law does govern Maryland service members. House Bill 273, the Defend the Guard Act, which has been sponsored in more than 40 states, attempts to deal with this problem. It does so by limiting the deployment of the Maryland National Guard to the constitutional declarations of war. Justifications for our foreign engagements should be clearly defined so that both the public and our service members understand what our goals are. Our service members should be guided by clearly defined victory conditions. Mission accomplished should be a predefined goal, not a banner to stand in front of for a political victory. Our participation in wars that last decades and the public lamentations of veterans who question their purpose are both indicators that policymakers should bring our deployments back to our constitutional bounds and that our Congress members should do their jobs. The only war that our country should engage in is one that our Congress members should put their mark on. The historic principle is that military conflicts voted on will be more well thought, more clearly defined, and more succinct. We should defend those who defend us. And with that, I'd be happy to take questions, and I'd ask for a favorable report on House Bill 273.
Thank you, Delegate. We'll hear from your panel and then open it up for questions. So I'd like to call on Eric Blitz, please.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Eric Blitz. I'm the chair of the Libertarian Party of Maryland. We support passage of House Bill 273. To supplement our written testimony, I'd like you to consider a hypothetical for a moment. Imagine you alone are responsible for deciding whether the country should go to war. If you're like me, you might want to know the answers to some important questions and ask many experts for their input. You might want to know what the justification for the war is and what its goals and objectives. Are they just? Is there a clearly defined national interest? You might want to know if the war can be won and what strategy would be, who exactly is the enemy and what are their objectives and strategies. You might want to know who are our allies and what level of commitment they will give, what the cost of the war will be, not only in financial terms, but what are the expected casualties on both sides? What are the expected civilian casualties? I would hope that you would ask what the alternatives to war might be. Are there diplomatic options that should be tried first? And you would probably want to know whether the public supports the proposed war and whether that support will continue. I am sure that you could come up with many other important and detailed questions, and that is the point. Having a broad national conversation sufficient to support a congressional declaration of war demands the input of many people, all asking different and often important questions that too often in our country get asked only after we are entrenched in another forever war. Requiring a declaration of war before the deployment of the Maryland National Guard forces congressional representatives to engage in the public debate that must be had on these questions. From that debate, a political consensus sufficient to win the vote is either formed or it isn't. The alternative is what we've had since World War II, wars that are waged on false pretenses that start without clear objectives and therefore last as long as the administrations can justify continuing the war with new and ever-evolving objectives. By passing this bill, you will declare that the policy of the state of Maryland is to demand Congress abide by their constitutional obligations and restore the proper balance of power between the legislative and executive branch. You will demand political accountability. This bill provides a sensible 10th Amendment approach to limiting our state's participation in undeclared wars. Your constituents who serve in the Maryland National Guard deserve to know that when they are called into active combat duty, they're doing so for the reasons that have been thoroughly vetted, thoughtfully considered, and that the effort at least has sufficient public support. We urge favorable support or favorable report.
Thank you, Mr. Blitz. You are using some of Delegate Grammer's leftover time. I'd like to call Dan McKnight, please.
Hi, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Dan McKnight. I'm a 13-year veteran of the United States military, including the United States Marine Corps, the United States Army, and the Army National Guard. I served in Afghanistan from 2005 through 2007. I'm also the chairman of an organization called Bring Our Troops Home that includes veterans from every war conflict from World War II through the current endless wars. Bring Our Troops Home is here in support of HB 273, commonly referred to as Defend the Guard. I'm here as a chairman and spokesman of our organization, as a private citizen, a veteran of the global war on terror, and as an American who believes that our founding fathers had it right when they created our federalist form of government. There's two ways for the National Guard to be called into federal service, and we're here to talk about one specifically, Title 10. Title 10 is primarily used to call the National Guard to participate in an armed conflict, war, humanitarian relief, or training outside of the United States. Activating the National Guard into federal service to fight in war declared by Congress is proper and legal, and it's one of the intended purposes of the National Guard. Training overseas is a proper Title 10 activation. Assisting in humanitarian missions is a proper Title 10 activation. However, participating in an armed conflict or participating as an instrumentality of war or performing hazardous duty in a foreign state without an Article 1 declaration of war by Congress is not proper or constitutional, and it shouldn't happen. However, a proper declaration of war changes things. From time to time, we know that the drums of war are going that they're going to beat, and we're going to hear that beat. And that sound does not alarm those of us that wear the uniform. In fact, the steady pounding of war drums is the cadence of our training and our career, and we will always answer the call of our nation. We will fight and win our nation's battles, but we swear an oath to the entire Constitution, and we demand that Congress honor their oath to the same inspired document, and that they first declare war and put their names on the line before we put a single boot on the ground. We encourage support of Defend the Guard HB 273. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKnight. Brandon Williamson.
Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Brandon Williamson. I'm testifying in favor of House Bill 273 on behalf of myself and Young Americans for Liberty, the most active youth organization for college students who care about the founding ideals of this great nation. I served as an 11 Bravo infantryman in the United States Army. When I enlisted, I, like so many others, swore an oath to the Constitution. I suspect the members of this committee also swore an oath to the Constitution. As a veteran, I take my oath to the Constitution very seriously. It offends me quite deeply when our elected officials break their oaths to the Constitution. You may be asking, how are they breaking their oaths? Well, according to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 of the United States Constitution, Congress, not the president, has the authority to declare war. The constitutional aspect isn't the only reason to support this bill. You should also support it because of the human impact these unconstitutional wars have had. We've lost approximately 7,000 of our war fighters in these wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Nigeria, etc. That's 7,000 families who will never see their brothers, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, wives, or husbands again. On top of that, according to the VA, up to 20% of the veterans of the war on terror suffer the effects of having watched their friends die and having their lives continuously at risk for as many as 18 months per deployment. But that statistic is a conservative one. But this isn't just a bill about the National Guard. It's also a pro-veteran bill. Many of our troops come back scarred from the things they've seen overseas. I myself have seen the long-lasting effects of PTSD, and some of my closest friends who've been in some of the most intense fighting of these wars. You've heard that 22 veterans a day take their own lives. Often those veterans are suffering from PTSD. If you don't support the military or veteran community, then don't support this bill. but I assume every member of this committee is a supporter of our veteran community. If you truly are, if you truly care about our men and women in uniform, please support this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. Dylan Griffith, please.
Yeah, thank you, members of the House Health and Government Operations Committee, Madam Chair. My name is Dylan Griffith. I'm a member of Veterans for Peace. I was born and raised in Cecil County, Maryland. I'm a veteran and served in the Helmand Province in Afghanistan. While I'm now a Delaware resident, I work in Maryland, and my entire family is there. I'm grateful that HB 273, Defend the Guard, is getting the attention it deserves. In Delaware, I work with the Defend the Guard initiative, and we hope to have a bill filed shortly. Defend the Guard provides an opportunity to put the oft-used term, support the troops, into action. It is no longer good enough to use the words as a slogan. This country must defend those who are willing to go to war by making sure that they are only sent into harm's way when it is absolutely necessary. State legislatures should take this opportunity to place limits around how we intervene in foreign countries and at what expense. Maryland has this opportunity with Defend the Guard, and they should use it to protect their state militia. Guardsmen are critical responders in their community before they are warfighters, and Maryland should reject the continued attempt to blur the lines and to employ them improperly. I work in public safety in Maryland among many who still serve in the National Guard. They joined the Guard to support their state, and Maryland has had its share of disasters over the years where their skills and capabilities have been much needed. The Defend the Guard Act protects critical state assets so that they are available during emergencies, and it protects our sons and daughters by ensuring that if they are sent to defend this country, it is only in response to an existential threat marked by a congressional declaration of war. I support HB 273 and am grateful to the committee for the opportunity to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alyssa Quapio. Alyssa? Is she here, Richard? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. She is here.
Okay. Maybe on mute, Ms. Quapio.
Okay.
There we go.
Hi, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm testifying about HB 273 because I think it's a really important bill for that the National Guard isn't being used overseas. This bill is great because it's nonpartisan. Democrats and Republicans can get around, can agree that our National Guard should be used for domestic emergencies in Maryland and around Maryland, especially for our Maryland National Guard. That it's not just about one president. It was initiated under President Trump, but it continues to grow from one state to 44 states now. And I think once one state passes it, it's going to, other states are going to follow. It also does allow for the National Guard to be used abroad, but only if Congress declares war. So it just keeps us more constitutionally tight, I guess, as you would say. So that if the National Guard is really needed by our federal government, it could be used, but only if they're using their, constitutional mandate to declare war. And then the reason that it's important too is, like, for example, Louisiana's Guard, when they came back from Syria, there was a lot of burnout and it was really difficult to retain National Guardsmen, and so that they didn't have the support for COVID that they needed, the response for COVID. We want to be prepared in Maryland for disasters or emergencies that come up, and especially us being right outside of DC, it's even more important that our Guard is available for anything that could happen there. And then just as a smaller side note, National Guardsmen and women tend to be in service fields, tend to be teachers, firefighters, and small business people. So when they're not in Maryland, it is a void to our state. So those are some of my thoughts on the bill.
Okay, thank you very much for coming and speaking to us today. That concludes the speakers panel. Are there questions for the delegate or the rest of the panel? Delegate Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing this bill. And thank all of you for your service who have testified here today. I spent 10 years in the Guard myself, so I understand when you say that they're always ready to be called up. However, can anyone tell us how many times they have been activated without a vote of Congress?
Mr. McKnight, you have that information?
Yeah, the National Guard has been deployed constantly since 1942 and never had a congressional declaration of war. It's never been done right. Congress has advocated the responsibility for almost 80 years.
Thank you for that answer. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Another small note, they're active right now. They're actually National Guards folk in Ukraine, training Ukrainians. It can only be assumed that if we did see a conflict there, the National Guard would be involved.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate. We generally only allow one answer to a question, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to finish. Are there any other questions? Delegate Bagnall.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the bill sponsor. Just to follow up on the point you just raised, under this bill, if the National Guard were deployed on a non-active combat mission, and then there was combat, would they then be recalled under this bill? If they were, for instance, on a training mission, and then there was active engagement, would they then be recalled under this bill?
I think the most direct answer to that question is yes. Under this bill, we would limit the use of our state guard to the constitutional declarations of war, and if they would be deployed under any non-constitutionally declared action, they would be brought home. Yes.
Okay. Seeing no other questions from, Delegate Riley. Just in time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, it was quick. As I was going off, it's like I did have questions. So you said 80 years they haven't used the Article 10 to get congressional approval. So if something did happen, say this bill passed, and they want to follow Article 10 and get congressional approval, can they do that at any time, call special session if they're not in session, or do they have to only do it during that time frame that they're in session? How would that work? Like if something came up and they knew it, we needed the National Guard, and pretty much, everybody, even the National Guard themselves, supported that effort, said, yes, we need to help out and do our job. Can Congress call that at any time?
Delegate Grammer, do you want to address that? Or
I could speak to that, but if someone else wants to speak to that, who's a little bit more knowledgeable, I'm fine with that too. Mr. McKnight, maybe?
Sure, I do want to take it on. Absolutely, Congress can reconvene for a declaration of war, an Article 1 declaration of war conference at any point in time. And it's been done throughout history. After Pearl Harbor, they met the next day and formed their declaration and had their debates.
And they, to follow up on that, so they don't have to give any 2-day notice or anything. They can call it today for 6 o'clock tonight.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the hearing on House Bill 273. Thank you, Delegate Grammer, and all of those who came to speak on it.